All right, so I'm going to do a posing analysis. So essentially this is a series of poses that combine a lot of the mandatory poses, but I also add my own little spin or my strength signature to each pose. And what I mean is I'm accentuating my strengths and attenuating my weaknesses or hiding my weaknesses. And a lot of these poses are classical poses, which is really kind of fitting for the division, right? I've also been a classical poser even before this division. I was posing classically when I first started because I felt that it actually suited my physique better. I've never been big, and this type of posing really works for a smaller physique because it makes it more interesting. Since you don't have the size, you might as well do something else, such as focus on perhaps your symmetry or your conditioning, right? Or your posing prowess, if you will. And so asymmetrical posing is something that I learned from the legendary Frank Zane, and really this was something that was incorporated by many of the golden era bodybuilders, Arnold Schwarzenegger and the like, in that what you're doing is you're accentuating your V-taper, or what's known as the Adonis aspect or ratio. And what that is the shoulder to waist ratio. In other words, almost like a triangle, right? So that really will accentuate the aesthetic aspect or the aesthetic appeal of the physique. And so adding a little bit of rotation or transverse plane integration can create more interesting aesthetic lines and angles that exaggerate symmetry via optical illusion. There's a lot of science, and it's an art to posing and understanding these concepts. Now, there's also a kinesiological aspect. So whenever I start a pose, I focus on my postural position. In other words, I want to sustain the pose from the ground up. We've heard that before, but what about the V-taper, right? So that takes some kinesthetic awareness. So while you're establishing your legs, you also want to make sure that you're not letting go of your lats, because you want to make yourself look good the whole time. You don't want to look washed out at any particular angle. And as if you're a smaller physique or if you really lean out, angles get difficult to really maximize because there's less mass to work with. But on the flip side, you have the advantage of being leaner. The other thing I sometimes will forget, unfortunately, is once I get into the position, I'm so focused on hitting the routine in rhythm that I forget to really squeeze the muscles hard sometimes, or you forget to hold your legs in a pose. And that's what makes this really challenging, is that it's not just the position of your body and setting it up, it's also hitting it from head to toe. And that can be difficult because when you really contract all your muscles, you can almost feel robotic or rigid in a way. But if you can do this enough with a lot of practice, you can make it look very fluid and very natural and very elegant. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is the neurological component of posing, which is the mental rehearsal. Now, this is something that really can be of an advantage for an experienced competitor, but it could also be effective for someone who is just starting. And the exception to that rule would be if you practice a routine enough, then you could actually mentally rehearse it, or this is also basically a form of mental imagery. Well, sometimes before the finals, if that's the format or if it's really whatever format, if there's a little break or an intermission, before I do my routine, I will mentally rehearse it, but I'll also go through abbreviated poses. And sometimes I'll do this when I go out to my car, right? If I have to get something, or I just want to go out there and just kind of be focused and kind of have my own space. Now, I'm out there in the parking lot and I'm kind of in public, so people will look at me like, well, what's this guy doing? Well, one thing I'll do is I'll do abbreviated poses so people really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm actually doing the poses and you can't tell I'm doing them because they're so abbreviated. It almost looks like natural, just kind of, postural changes, but in my mind, I'm actually hitting the pose in full form. And so this is a really interesting aspect of the neurology of posing, right? The mind-muscle connection, the mind-body connection. So you have to practice a routine in full form, but you can also mentally rehearse it so you can really kind of nail that whole choreography element, right? The sequence of your poses, how you hit them, and the timing of it with the song. So anyway, I just wanted to share some insights into the science of posing that I don't think I've shared before. And also, there's a lot of research that goes behind this, and I'll go ahead and put those studies in the video description in regards to many of the things I talked about. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time.